Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the 10th episode of our PhD PDF Scholarship Podcast. Today we have Dr. Reny Thomas, a material scientist from Sweden, sharing her expertise and insights on what to expect as a postdoc from Sweden. So now let's get to know more about Dr. Reny Thomas.
Thank you, Nirmal. Thank you, Arun, for this opportunity to share my experience and thoughts on how it is to have a postdoc. And currently, I would just say my background and what am I doing right now. So I'm actually working as a research scientist in an air filtration company in Sweden. So I moved to industry 1 year back, and I was doing postdoc in Sweden, in Luleå, and I would share my experiences on how it is, how I got the postdoc, and how I also shifted my experience during the postdoc, and also like how I shifted to the industry. Yeah.
Thank you. So to begin our podcast, so let me ask this question: like, what are the various postdoctoral fellowships that are available in Sweden, and in particular, like all these postdoc portions are like in collaborations with an industry partner, or is just based on the proposals that are run by the universities itself?
Yeah, so I will start with how I started looking for postdoc. So I was doing a postdoc in India after my PhD, and I would say that I had like 4 years of postdoctoral experience back in India as well. And it was during at that time I was thinking maybe I should move out of my comfort zone, explore a different laboratory or different research experience. So at that time, I started like searching in the web. Different platforms are there like scholarshippositions.com, different European Union websites are there where you can actually find postdoc positions which the universities publish. And also another thing I would say is that you can actually, if it is specific to Sweden, you can actually get a list of the universities available currently present in Sweden, and go to their university website and check the open positions. And from there, actually, you can get all the postdoc positions available in that university. And then you go into the advertisement, and you can actually, if you see that, if it matches exactly with your research area, you just write to the professor and say that you are interested in this position. I mean, you shouldn't always have the same email to all the professors. So it should be tailor-made. You have to say that this is your expertise and this is what you want to do, and how you actually fit into that particular position. And then I would say the project which I was in was a collaboration between Finland and Sweden, and it was on forest based materials, that is mainly cellulose based materials, because Sweden as such, they support a lot of wood, and sustainability is very important. So based on that, there is a lot of funding sorry, on wood-based or cellulose-based materials, or research onto that particular topic. So this was a collaborative proposal between Finland, university in Finland, and Sweden. And then the interview was with both the professors from the both sides. And then they ask about, we present our research, and also it was a very, very friendly and open conversation. And I have also observed from my colleagues that there are a lot of industrial ties. So currently, right now, I am in an industry where we also have industrial collaborations with universities. So I would say it is very common in Sweden to have an industrial collaboration. And it's also good that you have like two partners, you get more networking, like more, you get to know more people, and you finally realize what the industry needs. Because there's always, as a person coming from academia to industry, there's always a gap in between. So now actually I see exactly how our perspective is when we are a postdoc or from the academic side, and how the industry looks on it. So it's most of the information that the industry has is not always available to the academic partners. So I would say Sweden is doing really great in that, because they are trying to merge this industry and academy, so that they get more fruitful outcomes from the research, like an actual product or a technology. So it's very common, and it is very I would say it is mostly like that, like you have an industry partners. But there are like basic research. I wouldn't say there are no like basic or university kind of research, but there are fundings which are just like core research or basic research. I would say that is also one option. And then I would also like to say that, since I said that I had been doing postdoc for like 4 years in India, since I am a woman and I had a child, so there was an option that you get like a leniency with the number of years after PhD. The usual criteria is 3 years after PhD to apply for a postdoc in Sweden. If you observe most of the advertisements that they have, I wouldn't say everything is like that, but the one which I applied, or the most like 80 or 90% of the advertisements that I have seen for postdoc is like 3 years after PhD. You have to be like within 3 years after completing your PhD when you want to apply for a postdoc. This is specific to Sweden, I'm saying. But since I had a maternity leave, I could actually, my professor said it's okay, because you have a child care thing in your career, so it is possible to extend that 3 years. So that is something which is good to know for all the young female researchers who feel that you have a child and you cannot do a postdoc abroad. It's something really useful to know that you still can do that. It's okay to have a child and take care of the child, take a break. It's okay. You can actually have that break and still resume back to your career. So I have done that. So that's a really positive thing, I would say. I mean, that's something with Sweden is very positive and open to that kind of family and a life kind of balance. Yeah.
That's very much accommodating in terms of like, yeah, someone who is having a concern about their family, like while doing
Yes.
research, yeah, how can they accommodate their family, whether they can bring them to a new place. So yeah,
Yes.
so my basic question is all about like being a researcher in India. What all are the things that you need to take care when you are applying for the process of a postdoctorate, and
Yeah.
what's the typical duration of postdoctoral positions, and also like in terms of yeah, work-life balance, you already mentioned it can be accommodated, like more than that, like what all are the opportunities that the postdoc can be offered from a country like Sweden, and if
Yeah.
not postdoc, what all are the other options basically a PhD can look for there in Sweden.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I will answer like maybe I might lose some of the points, but I would try to summarize. So basically, yeah, when we say about the postdoc fellowships, there are like two types that I know. I mean, there are like salary based and also fellowship based. So only the main difference is that the fellowship or the scholarship would be tax free, and it would be lesser amount as well. Like for example, if you have like 3,000 would be like 3,000 euros would be the I think the starting salary of a postdoc in Sweden, but it can vary from 3,000 to 4,000 euros, and it's taxable. But if you have a scholarship of some kind of like a funding agency or like a NGO kind of those kind of fellowships, scholarships are there, but that is not taxable. So those every kind of fellowship is like renewed yearly, and for my fellowship it was for 2 years, and it could be extended for like maybe few more months. That is the thing. I think the maximum is 2 to 3 years for the the extent. And if it's a scholarship, it is renewed yearly, but it should always have I mean, it depends upon your professor also. Like if you have, I have seen colleagues who had fellowships or like, I mean, the tax-free scholarship with a lesser amount. But after a year, they might say that, we don't want to support you in the next year. So it totally depends on the what do you say, the professor. But if you have like a work permit for 2 years, and after like 1 year, they cannot say that I don't want you for the next year. They cannot say that, because you have signed a contract for 2 years. So that is something which should be considered when you are like bringing your family, and you shouldn't risk it, like, or if you feel that the place is not safe, or you don't have the next opportunity, you must always have a backup plan. Try to apply again more. And also, one thing which I have observed is that once you are into a postdoc in Sweden or any European countries, it's always good to explore everywhere when you are still here. I would say the opportunities would be more, and the visa procedures are the same. So they would prefer more of a person who is currently residing in the country. Like, so it's always safe and better to move on when you're still in the country, rather than going back to your own country and coming back. It would be even more troublesome and time consuming as well. And also I have observed that if you have a really supportive lab and a professor, you can also write research grants. You don't need to have, like in India, we need a permanent position to write a research grant, which is really annoying. I felt that it is really not the way it should be. But here, as a postdoc, you can apply for a research grant from a funding agency without having a permanent position, but with the support of your professor. So you need to have a senior professor guiding you, but you can be the project investigator. So that is really good, which I have seen in most of the European countries. That is a possibility to do, which would definitely move you to the next phase. Like, if you want to carry on with your research career in academia, you can write and get research funds. So that is also possible. What was the other question, Sarmal? Is that
three types, like basically about the visa. So you mentioned about the work permit, right? So like for a person or for a student who has completed, for a researcher, like a work visa or a permit visa, like what are the difference? Like if it's a permit visa, what does it mean? How long we can have, or what is a classification, like visa D, or is it a single permit? Likewise.
I would say, I don't think there is like a visa D, or like in US, there is no that kind of class. But I would say that for research, there is a special visa, like the residence. You get a residence visa. Like if you get a postdoc for more than 1 year, it's always good to get more than 1 year, because only if you get more than 1 year, you get a personal number. So only if you get that personal number, it's like the social security number. Only if you get that, you can actually avail many of the like the health and all the other things that you need, like to go to a bank, or it is possible still, but it would be much easier if you have more than 1 year of visa. And I applied for my visa all by myself through the online website. So I didn't go to any agencies to apply for my visa. It's very straightforward. You just need the letter from your university, and you just need to fill in and I also applied for my family together with me. And the university did not pay for the visa expenses. I had to pay it by myself. I think that is very common, but I don't know if other universities also support, but for me, I did it by myself. And your spouse can also have a work permit. So your spouse is eligible to work in Sweden with the visa. With the visa that you get, your spouse is eligible to work, and also your spouse is eligible to work to study if he or she wants to do a higher education like masters or PhD. That is also possible, and the masters, the education is free. It's free, for you don't have to pay the fees when you use this kind of visa. You can actually study free of charge in the universities in Sweden. So that is also really good, I would say, for someone who wants to have, their spouse shouldn't lose their career, or they can still continue what they want to do. But definitely about the language, I would say, like technical fields or research fields, language is not a big concern, because it's all international. And even the current company that I work, I don't have the working language as Swedish, because there is a lot of international colleagues in the company and we speak English. But if you are in a much more like a customer related field, or like a management field, wherein you have to really interact with the local people or the people around you, Swedish is a must. So for research, it's not a problem. But for other fields, like the other fields wherein you have to interact with people, Swedish is a must. So if you are planning to stay here for a longer time and you are out of these kind of technical field, it will be hard. You will have to learn the language in the future to have to integrate into the society. And also, I would also add, the kids, when they go to school, they speak in Swedish. There are international schools. I mean, there are English schools, but it is not common everywhere. In Stockholm, you have some, and in other areas also you have some. But I would say my daughter speaks Swedish really fluently. They pick up really good. So it's kids, they learn the language really like in few months they will get it. But for adults, you have to put a lot of effort to speak like a native speaker. So it can be hard on people who are out of the research field. But for us, it's completely okay, and it was not a problem.
Okay, so you talked about different scholarships as well as the fellowships. So can you say about like what kind of branches of study are more specific to Sweden? Like different countries have a different mastery over different kinds of domains. So in Sweden, what do you think are the specialized domains which they focus for research?
Yeah, I would say that it might not be exactly, I don't know if I'm covering all the aspects, but from what I have read and learned is that it has a lot of focus on material science, nanotechnology, and as I said earlier, wood and sustainability, and like cellulose based materials, like sustainable materials. They give a lot of importance and funding for those areas of research. And I have also seen that there is a group where are like, you have mining and metals and materials. Those kind of areas are also there are like core dedicated research groups which are like big in these areas as well. And then electric vehicles or those kind of areas are also like the Volvo or Scania. I mean, these are all the companies which are really big here. And if you have a mechanical engineering background in something like, you do and research in these kind of electric vehicles or battery is another area of research. We have one big battery research or battery development company, Northvolt, here in Sweden. So these are some of the biggest, I would say, the big players in the country. So I think they give a lot of focus on nanotechnology and material science. They give really good focus on research.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's why like the funding when you see for these sort of areas, it's quite like they are welcoming a lot of new ideas with respect to meeting the sustainable goals. And see, for a researcher who has done a considerable amount of research in India and then moving on to a postdoctoral position in Sweden, like how do you compare the research culture, first of all, the general culture as well as the research culture, and what does Swedish culture has to offer to someone who is coming as an international student over there, in your perspective?
Most of the Swedish professors or the people are very open to work. I mean, they are not like, really like stressful, or you have a definite project actually. Like each PhD or a postdoc, like in my instance, like I have a definite project in my for that I am hired, and I work specifically on that. But I would say more than that, I have gained like really good amount of experience back in India, where I was actually in NIST, CSIR NIST, where I was open to different areas of research. So I really enjoyed expanding my research areas, and I like that made me confident to do anything out of my research expertise also, like to learn in different areas. So I would say it is a bit more focused way of research from my point of view, but maybe a person who has done PhD in Sweden would can say in a better way. But I would say that my research experience in India has helped me a lot with in accommodating or in adjusting. Like a person, I would say, from India wouldn't have any problem in doing a postdoc in Sweden, because we have already had the the experience or to in a wide range. That, because I would say, like, for my PhD, I was researching on material science, mostly material synthesis and characterization, like metal oxides for water purification or those kind of photocatalytic application. But then one good thing I found that is that when I did my first postdoc in India, I applied for the national postdoc, where one of the criteria was to write a project out of your PhD area. It shouldn't be exactly what you did in PhD. It shouldn't be a continuation of your PhD. So that is when I moved from this metal oxides or these kind of materials to cellulose-based materials in CSIR NIST. So that actually opened up my later phases of my career. So since I had an experience in nanocellulose and cellulose based materials, which helped me to get a postdoc in Sweden, where the group I went was actually an expertized, they were really good at nanocellulose based research. So if you see, it's always good to come out of your comfort zone, try a different area. It's okay, some people believe that they have to be focused on one particular line of research, but that is okay. But I would say it's really good to have an interdisciplinary experience. So I think from India, with the experience that you have, you should not have any problem over here. And also, one thing I would focus is that, like in some institutes in India, not the IITs, but I would say some other institutes, you don't get access to do all the characterization techniques. Like in CSI NIST, we were not. Me being a postdoc, I didn't have the access to use the SEM, scanning electron microscope, or other instruments. But when you come as a postdoc abroad, you will get the training to use each and every instrument. I think in US also it's the same. It's you get the training and you get to use the instrument for yourself. So most of the PhD students, they characterize their materials by themselves. So that is an exposure. Maybe the Indian students who didn't have an opportunity to work on the characterization by themselves, they can actually explore all that here. You will be able to do it. I would say it's always good to characterize your materials, your results by yourselves, and to analyze it, take time. And if you are really into research, you would do that for sure, rather than somebody else doing it for you.
So, in continuing to this, for our international postdoc, always the question is what after postdoc. So, with your experience in Swedish university, so how do these Swedish research institutions support a postdoc in their career progression?
Yeah, I would say in my case, I had a 2-year postdoc, as I said, a 2-year grant, and then I reached to a position wherein I have already had like 5 years of postdoc experience in my career. So it was high time that I have already written research grants back in India. And I actually approached my professor that I wanted to write a research grant, but then my professor was not so supportive for me to write the research grant. Or that is something you can actually do as a postdoc. If your professor is supportive, you can write research grants. So that can be actually a next stage. So it all depends upon the mentor you choose or the mentor you are with. So if it's a good place and you see that your professor can support you with the next phase of your career, it is all safe and good to move on. Or else, when I found that that is not an option for me, I started looking in. I started like looking. Maybe I should. I mean, I didn't want to do another postdoc back in Sweden. I thought maybe I should just try industrial research, and that's when I decided that this is something which and I started applying for industries. So when I got the position in my current company, I actually, when I spoke to my boss, she said that this is a research and development department, and I will be in charge of the R&D. So it was also related to developing new materials. So I found that really interesting, because I always wanted the research that I do to come up to as a product. So that was something which I had in my mind. Any research that I do, I would like to see it as a product in the market, or at least something good for the society or something like that. It's something that I had in my mind even when I started my PhD. So I felt that maybe this is the time that I should change. So when you are in a postdoc here in Sweden, you can actually see, you can write a project proposals, you can write different proposals. I mean, you should do it quite early before your term ends. That's because you have to go back if your visa ends, if you don't have any other positions ready. But most of the professors support you. They like extend the research, or they can also fund you with something else. So if you have a really good supportive research supervisor, it's all good to go. Like, you can write research grants and all those things. Or the other option is look for industries. Try to there are a lot of industries which hire PhDs and postdocs, and also masters. You don't need to have actually a PhD here in Sweden. From what I have observed, that people have like masters and bachelors, and still they are really doing really good, because they come into the industry like a really young age, and they gain experience over the ages, and they do really good actually. But we also have an option. You have come as a postdoc, you can actually switch to industry, or you can still write projects, and you can also start teaching. You can do some pedagogy courses in the university. They actually provide that. You can do those courses wherein you become eligible to teach the masters or the undergraduates in the same university. So that will actually give you some additional points, like additional work credits. And with that, you can actually also apply for a lecture position in the same university. Or you can also give courses. That is also a possibility. So I've seen some of the colleagues doing that. You can actually do teaching, and because if teaching or being in the university is something that you want, you can actually move in that direction. You can teach, you can because since it's a university, you will have a lot of students for sure. So you can also support your professor with any courses, and also take labs. So that's also something, and you can actually integrate yourself slowly into the university. That is also a possibility.
Yeah. So when you mention about transitioning to a industry, like how far is the job stability in an industry, and like if someone wants to go to academy also, what all are the possible routes? Like, is it like you need to have 3 or 4 postdoc mandatory? Or like even for going to industry, whether like you mentioned even those masters and like bachelor students are directly going to industry. So as a postdoc, when you go to industry, what is the uh, what specialty you are being offered there? Is it only the scientists are getting accepted as what industrial role in the industries? And also, as mentioned, for academia, what are the possible routes? Yep.
Yeah. I would say I will start with the industry, the transition that I made. Like, for like the job that I applied did not ask for a PhD. So I found the job in LinkedIn, and I just applied because I felt that the research is in align with what I am doing, and I just applied. But during the interview, they see your CV. I mean, they see that you are a postdoc and you have a PhD. So basically, they will actually increase their level. Like, you cannot you cannot always negotiate with all those things that you can. They will. I had a good opportunity. Like, they didn't actually put me back to a master's or that level. They actually valued my research experience, and they said that, this is what we want. You seem to be a really fit into this role of that's being offered. And I would say that, what was the other question, Nirmal?
So when you move to academia as well, like what all are the basic requirements? Like do you need to have 3 or 4 postdocs? Is it mandatory to have postdocs, or how swift is getting into a lecturer position in Sweden?
Yeah, I think it depends on your profile also, because I have seen that the assistant professor positions mostly, it depends like on how many papers you have published. Like, sometimes I feel like, the number is given more credit here than the qualities. And some good institutes actually, say that, the impact factor is not a big thing here. Actually, that is something which I found really confusing, because back in India, impact factor, you judge everyone with H index and all those things. But I don't know, sometimes here I feel that the number is given more value, but it totally depends upon which group you are in, or which university you are in. Like, for example, the university that I was in, if you publish a paper, the university gives you some amount of money. Even if it is an open access or a paid journal, you get some money from the university for publishing that paper. So sometimes I feel maybe, I don't know how good that is. Sometimes that has actually made me confused. So that I don't know what kind of research is that. Like, so it's always so much confusing, but it's always good, that you keep your minds open. Don't try to be so fast in judging. Maybe you just have to know that this is how it is here. And it's also that some areas, they also say that, you don't have to. But I have seen it's not so easy to get into an assistant professor position directly. You need to have, like, if you have like research grants, or you have like, money funding yourself, it's easy. So that itself is a hard thing to get a project. So if you have, like, you are with a professor, you have some, projects, and then you can also hire PhD students in that project. So say, for example, you have a funding, you've received a funding, you can hire PhD students. So I have seen that people have PhD students, and then they work in the lab, wherein your senior professor's lab, where he or she allows you to work with that project, because they get the money for the university and for the staff. And then you can actually apply for different positions in the same or different universities, and you can actually shift your whole group to, that university. So it's all possible. So if you have if you have, if you try to get more networking, and get industrial collaborations and get the fundings, I would say, if academia is something you really want to do in all your life, then that is the way you should go. You should focus more on having the network, right projects, find the suitable industrial collaborators. For that, it is always good that to go to conferences, meet people, talk to them about your research. You don't have to be secretive. Like, sometimes in India we do that. Sometimes it's like too secretive. You don't have to be so much secretive. You can just say that this is that I do, and do you think that this particular research is good for you? So you can always collaborate in that way. So there are different ups and downs.
Yeah, so when you mention about these many possibilities, like definitely the counterpart will be the challenges, right? The challenges you have to go through being in an academia, being in a postdoc, being in an industry. So in a Swedish scenario, how do you rate this?
Yeah, I felt, as always in India also, I felt like, jumping from one postdoc to other, it's a lot of insecurity I felt. That's one thing I felt, because that shouldn't be there, but sadly it is the truth. Because when you do this kind of high-end research, you need to have a mental, a state of mind wherein that you feel secure to do the research that you are supposed to do. But it's a very unstable profession. So that is also one of the reasons that I moved to industry. And so one question which I forgot to answer is, Nirmal, is that in industry, so the contract that I have got is a permanent contract. So it is a permanent position that I got in Sweden in the industry. So that gave me actually a very peace of mind to work, and also for my family also to, like, if I want, I can change, but I can continue here as long as it is there. So it's a permanent position that I got in the industry. But if it is a postdoc or a research grant, you still have to try to get the next grant. You have to support yourself with the next. You have to constantly keep on doing it. So it's like a never-ending process. So that is something which I found very insecure with. Yeah.
So, regarding the postdoc life in Sweden, like, can you explain like what are the basic space skills? Like in the US, we are graded into different levels. Like we have level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. So, what are the various space scales in Sweden? And maybe if you could explain like what is the basic living cost and accommodation, it would be helpful for any international postdocs who are arriving at Sweden.
Yeah. So I would say the first part, you say the life of a postdoc. Yeah. So when I came here, it's always good that if you have a family, you can actually travel together with the family. Most of the postdoc fellowships are good enough to support your family, but it also depends upon the area you are in Stockholm, or like in Sweden. For example, Stockholm is very expensive in terms of rent. It is really high rent, so you need to go to a little bit far off area to have to have at least a moderate level of expense. I would say if you get a salary of like 35,000 SEK, Swedish crowns, you might have to pay at least 15,000 for the rent in and around Stockholm. But if you move to other places, like I was far north, like in Luleå, you can also get an apartment in 5,000 or 6,000. If you are coming as a single person, you can easily get a one bedroom in 5,000 SEK, so 5,000 or 6,000. Like student apartments, you can get that. So that shouldn't be a problem. You just have to find the right area where you want to stay, and you can also always commute. So traveling is not an issue. Like you have the bus, then you have the subways in Stockholm, so it's really fast and quick, so it's not a problem with the traveling. Most of the people travel like half an hour to 1 hour daily one way, so that they can cope up with the expenses and all that. But then on the other hand, we have this vacation, that is yearly vacation, which is actually a must that you should take it. I mean, in my group, it was like it comes during this time, like July, August. You are not allowed to work. You have to go for vacation. So which is something which we don't have in India. I mean, we never go for vacation, like 1 or 2 months of vacation. I have never heard that was something really new to me when I came here for postdoc. It was the first time in my life after my, I would say after my master's, or to take like 1 month break. So which is really needed. I would say that is very much needed. You don't have to work all 365 days a year to be or to have really good output. It's okay to have. So that's one culture here, and it's also not a culture to have to be in the lab in like Saturdays and Sundays. But there are some groups wherein they work on Saturdays and Sundays, but it is not a common thing to work on Saturdays and Sundays in the lab. So vacation is a must. You have to enjoy your life. You don't have to be here all the time in the lab. So the time you're there, you have to plan your experiments and do it in a real. I mean, I would say it's a really good work-life balance and all that. And then one important thing I would say regarding the salary is that the tax is really high. So if you have 35,000 Swedish crowns as a postdoc salary, you will have at least 33% as tax. So that is really high. So 29 to 33, 34 is the range depending on the place in the country you are in. So that is something which you cannot do anything. You have to pay the tax for, you have to do that. I mean, it will get deducted from your salary when you get it. And also one thing I would say is that this is some information which I had used. When you come as a postdoc to Sweden, the first 2 years actually you can apply for a tax reduction, because you are a skilled worker who has been hired from another country, because they did not find a candidate from here. So you have been hired from another country, so you can actually apply for a tax reduction, a tax rebate. You can apply for that, but that you should do like within 3 months of your arrival in Sweden. So that is something that has to be, that is a good point which my friend shared it with me, and I had also applied, and that you can actually avail for 5 years. So you don't have to, you will not be forced to pay the full tax amount. A percentage of your salary will be tax free, because you are considered as a high skilled worker. So that's something good to know that I felt. Yeah. And then other expenses, I would say, if you know how to cook, everybody should know how to cook, because it's not possible to go out and eat. It's crazy expensive. Everything is expensive, but you just have to find a balance, maybe of how, your lifestyle. You can just, try to maybe I would say maybe 2,000 or 3,000 crowns you can spend for grocery and try to cook what you want. And in the north, electricity is not an issue, because it's a renewable energy over there, and north of Sweden, so it's not so expensive. But towards the south, electricity is very expensive. So that's something you might need to consider, like when you when you use a lot of electrical things, you might, like, the heating is, during the winters, heating is a must over here. So yeah, I would also suggest about the weather. Towards the north, the place where I have been, we had temperatures down to -35 and also -20 during the winters. The winters are very cold. So I have experienced -35 for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, like just stand out and just come in. But still you get all kinds of gadgets, like you have really protective shoes and jackets, so it's not a problem. But then towards the south of Sweden, you don't have to worry about that kind of really cold winters. It will like go up to maybe -10, maybe not more than that. So it's okay, but this is something you might need to consider when you move to. But I wouldn't say that you should restrict yourself to because of the weather. You can just go have a try and leave the way how it is, and you will definitely come over it.
Yeah, so that's quite extreme when you compare the north and south condition. -35
Yes,
is
yes.
like, it's very difficult to imagine
because
it.
because it is very close to the North Pole. But I would also say that since it is near the North Pole, you can see the Northern Lights, so which is really beautiful. So the north of Sweden is also very beautiful. Like you see the Northern Lights, and it's really nice. So there are good and bad. You just have to
Exactly.
Yeah.
Enjoy all phase of your life and different
Yeah.
geography. Yeah. And also, like, I think this will be the last question. Like, how about the possibilities of obtaining a PR over there in Sweden? Like, when you work there for a long time, there is a possibility that you can have further security by applying a PR. Yeah.
Yes.
And what all other, if you apply PR, what all other privileges that you will get?
If you are working and paying tax for 4 years, you are eligible to apply for the PR, permanent residence. And then after that, after 4 years, I think it's 7 years, you can actually apply for citizenship. So it is not a problem at all. But if you have a citizenship, there are a lot of other, I think, healthcare wise, and you can also actually, even if you are not a PR or a citizen, you can also buy houses. So I have seen PhD candidates, like PhD students, actually buying houses or apartments here because they feel that it's a long term, like 4-5 years to be here. So you can always sell it when you go back. So that is also a possibility. You can actually buy an apartment. Earlier, it used to be much more cheaper because the interest rates were very less. So that if you don't want to pay the rent, you can actually think about of buying also, because it's not a big deal. It's quite normal to buy. So you don't have to be a resident or PR. You don't have to be a permanent resident or a citizen to buy. You can also buy it when you are doing your PhD. That's also possible. I think after PhD, after 4 years, you need to have something like a work showing that you will be supported for 18 months to apply for a PR. I'm not sure, because otherwise, if like a postdoc like me, you are here for like 4 years and in an industry or any kind of job that you do, then you're eligible to apply for a PR.
So thank you for that information. So by this, we have come to the end of the podcast. So in this episode, we had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Reny Thomas, who provided invaluable insights into what to expect as a postdoc in Sweden. So from discussing postdoc fellowships to exploring research culture, addressing the challenges, we gained a comprehensive understanding of the postdoc experience in Sweden. So finally, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Reny Thomas for sharing her expertise and enriching our podcast with her knowledge.
Thank you so much, Nirmal and Arun. I felt it's really good to share my experience. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.